Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of In the Corner. I'm Cash. Today we're episode 142, and we've got a really, really good weekend of fights coming up. A lot of news to talk about, so let's just hop into it. We've got three big fight nights happening. UFC is back in Seattle with Israel Adesanya. PBC PPV in Las Vegas with Keith Thurman versus Sebastian Fundora, and Itauma returns against Jermaine Franklin. You also have PFL Pittsburgh, Johnny Eblen, Bryan Battle. So we'll talk about all of it. Let's start with UFC. Because this is really, really an important fight for one of the legends at this point of the sport, and that is Israel Adesanya. He's coming into this against Joe Pyfer, number 4 versus number 14. And this is kind of his last chance. It kind of is, because the guy's riding a 3-fight losing streak. Those last two being finishes as losses. And I don't know, man. Part of me is leaning in two different directions of this fight. Where one hand, it's like, dude, is he going to show up? Because I think that the only one of those last 3 losses that were just poor Izzy performances was the Sean Strickland one. That was a very largely one-sided fight. But then you look at the other ones. DDP was super competitive until it got taken to the ground, and Izzy is not as good on the ground. So I'm not saying Izzy should have won or anything like that, but it was competitive up until that point. Very competitive. You look at the Nasruddin Imavov fight. Very competitive up until that point. And Izzy got knocked out because 5 seconds before he gets poked in the eye, does not take any time to recover, really. So he doesn't give himself much time to really, come back from that and readjust his eye. And he says later, I don't want to blame that for loss, but I probably should have taken more time to recover. And so, he keeps on making these vital mistakes in the fights or just getting caught up in somebody else's game plan, where I think that if the right Izzy shows up, he should definitely be able to beat Joe Pyfer. Joe Pyfer, I think he's 6-1 in the UFC or something. He's been on a really, really good run. He's now in the rankings, coming off a knockout win. And dude, the guy is a unit. And he's a heavy hitter, so this is a tough fight for Izzy. This is very much an old guard versus new guard kind of fight. And if Joe Pyfer beats Izzy, he ascends up the rankings, and he becomes a top-tier middleweight. So it's a big opportunity for him, and I think it's a very winnable fight for him, mainly because Izzy is, not the same Izzy he once was. And look, while Izzy is not the same Izzy he once was, I don't think that Izzy is completely washed. I still think that he has fights to give, and I think that he has good performances still in him. We're really just going to have to see, does the right Izzy show up, and how good is Joe Pyfer against an elite opponent, because this is his first elite opponent. So I'm going to pick Izzy to win. If he does win, it could be inside the distance. I don't know. It's a really, really interesting fight. I love this matchmaking, because you can't give Izzy a top guy. He's on a 3-fight losing streak, like I said, but you also want to give him a ranked opponent. So you give him a guy who's entering the rankings, give this guy a huge opportunity. So I like the matchmaking a lot. I'm going to pick Izzy, and it's more so, or not more so, but it's largely kind of I'm rooting for Izzy type ordeal. But I do think that the best version of Israel Adesanya beats the best version of Joe Pyfer. We're just going to have to see what version of both shows up on Saturday night at the Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle, Washington. Card is pretty good for a fight night. Co-main event, Alexa Grasso versus Macy Barber. Alexa Grasso coming, I think she's on a 2-fight losing streak. The one before that was a draw. So she hasn't looked insane in her last few fights, and in her last few fights, she's actually been beaten pretty handily. Where Macy Barber obviously had a big layoff with an injury, I think, and now she's back. She had a really good win recently. I think it was in October or something like that. So, I'm picking Macy Barber to win this fight. This feels, it's a top 5 fight in the flyweight division, and it feels like Macy Barber's got a lot of momentum. Alexa Grasso does not, and she's kind of on her way out. Maybe. So I'm picking Macy Barber to win that one, probably by decision. Before that, you have the retirement fight for one Michael Chiesa. I like that they're giving him a retirement fight in his home state. I think that's pretty cool. Nico Price steps in on a week's notice, and Chiesa's the biggest favorite on the card. Maybe there's a banana peel here. I don't know, because look, if you are in your last fight and it's your last fight, you may not have the same amount of, eagerness to win. But I think Chiesa should be able to beat Nico Price. And then elsewhere on the card, before that, you got Julian Erosa versus Larion Douglas. Could be fun. Mansour Abdul Malik versus UC Belgaroui. I'm picking Mansour in that one, but that is a close fight. I like that. Terrence McKinney is back. I love Terrence McKinney. He's fighting Kyle Nelson. I think he wins this one, but dude, Terrence McKinney, everybody knows his ordeal. He has never been to the distance, win or lose. And the majority, I think 25 fights, 21 of them have been
have ended in the first round. So he's always value for money. Ignacio Bahamondes is in the featured prelim. He's fighting Tofik Musayev, so going up against another Azerbaijan fighter. Chase Hooper's back against Lance Gibson Jr. Both those guys are from Seattle area. Marcin Tybura, he's fighting Tyrell Fortune, which is kind of a random match, but Tybura was meant to fight Walter Walker on this card. And then he gets Fortune as well, and a few other fights. But yeah, I think it's a really solid UFC fight night. I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I'm excited to see Izzy back in the cage, but I'm also a little bit worried about it because he is one of those fighters that you just love so much, and you want to see him win, and you want to see him, have good performances, but you also don't want to see him hang around for too long. And I don't know, dude. How good is Joe Pyfer? We find out Saturday. All right, let's talk about PBC pay-per-view, Sebastian Fundora, Keith Thurman, and that thing right there that I just said is a huge issue. This should not really be a pay-per-view, if we're being honest. Because, yes, Fundora versus Thurman is a big fight. Keith Thurman is, or at least was, one of the biggest stars in American boxing in, like, the late 2010s. And Sebastian Fundora is one of the better American champions right now. The Towering Inferno, 6'6" in the super welterweight division. I mean, 154 pounds, weighing 6'6" is just an absurd build. His size difference against Keith Thurman is absurd. I think Keith Thurman's like 5'9", so I mean he's gonna have a huge size advantage. He's way more active. He's in his prime. Keith Thurman has had like one fight in the past 4 years, and all of this I'm saying just because I don't think Keith Thurman has much of a chance at all. Like I really, really don't. I think that this. I'm ready for this fight to be over so we can move on and get Fundora into a legitimate fight, a legitimate title competition. And look, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Thurman all of a sudden turns back the years and shows like, yeah, I'm still that guy. I'm still one time. But I don't know, man. I think it's just such a tall order, literally and figuratively, for him to come in and beat Fundora, who's just assassinating everybody who steps into the ring with him right now. I want to see Fundora fight Virgil Ortiz, Boots Ennis, Xander Zayas. Keith Thurman, I feel like he's had his moment, and that moment's beyond him now. Keith Thurman, like I said, he's a good fighter. I think his only loss comes to the great Manny Pacquiao, but I mean, I don't know, dude. I maybe look, Fundora did get knocked out by Bryan Mendoza, who's actually in the co-main event here, and I mean, hey, maybe Keith Thurman can find a similar way to catch the chin. Look, a lot of people say that they actually like fighting the taller fighter. They like being the shorter fighter, and maybe Thurman thinks that, and maybe Thurman thinks he can just reach up and catch him. But it's just a really, really big ask, and I don't think he can do it. So I pick Fundora to win this fight, maybe even by stoppage. We'll see. Yeah, I would say late stoppage or by decision, Fundora. Like I said, co-main event, Yoenis Tejas versus Bryan Mendoza. A bit of a random fight that, was just added a few weeks ago after Torres versus Sanchez got taken off the card, which would have made it pay-per-view worthy. But like I said, I mean, like Fundora Thurman is the only fight on here that can warrant a pay-per-view if it has a strong undercard, and it doesn't really. It's got some okay fights, but pay-per-view wise, not really. Tejas, still on the comeback from his loss to Abbas Barrel, which was a fight of the year candidate last year. I do think that he beats Bryan Mendoza, but it's one of his toughest tests as a pro, probably right behind the Barrao fight. So could be good. Before that, you're going to have Yoeli Hernandez. This is his 10th professional fight. He's fighting Taro Gaucher. I don't understand how this guy's not in a title fight yet, and mainly because Erislandy Lara is the champion, and I think Hernandez is like number one with the WBA. That's the fight that he wants, and Lara fights like once a year, and when he does, it's not even against like ranked guys. I mean, I know he's supposed to unify with Janibek, ends up fighting Johan Gonzalez. Before that, it was Danny Garcia. I really want to see Hernandez get that shot, but he's been, not overly active in the meantime. And here he's fighting Gaucher, and I think that your Hernandez definitely beats him. Gaucher is on a 2-fight losing streak, but that last loss was against Elijah Garcia, which was a fight that I totally thought that he won. But yeah, I think Hernandez won this one. I think he's 9-0 with 8 knockouts. I don't think that he stops Gaucher because Gaucher's a really tough fighter, but I think Hernandez definitely gets the win. And opening up the pay-per-view is Gurgen Hovhannissian fighting Cesar Navarro. Hovhannissian, an undefeated heavyweight. Navarro gave Denier Pero a very good fight, almost stopped him in the beginning of it. So I think that's actually a decent matchup. I just don't understand why it's on the pay-per-view when you have Elijah Garcia, who's meant to originally be on the pay-per-view. He got moved down to the prelims. He's fighting Kevin Newman II. That fight I feel like should open the prelims, but whatever. I mean, just not the biggest PBC card. Kaipo Gallegos, I believe this is his first 10-rounder. He's fighting Julian Gonzalez. That's a decent fight. I don't know, man. I'm definitely looking forward to it. It's just it's not really worth the $75 price tag. I'm sorry. Okay, let's talk about it. This is the best card of the weekend, and it's not even a question. Frank Warren has done it again. He's got another magnificent 7 card lined up for us, and headlining it is none other than the future of the heavyweight division, one Moses Itauma. The guy is just absolutely annihilating everyone who steps in the ring with him. Last time it was Dillian White. My issue with Itauma, he has not been active, and he hasn't been getting rounds. I mean, I think that he's fought literally 4 minutes since in the past 2 years in the ring, which is it's just not enough. You know, when you're fighting everyone and knocking them all out in the first round, you shouldn't be taking 7 months in between fights. You shouldn't. You should be taking 2. So I mean, look, Jermaine Franklin, his thing is that he goes the rounds. He only has 2 losses, one to Dillian White and one to Anthony Joshua. Both of those went the distance. And if Anthony Joshua can't knock you out, that's usually a good a good feather in your cap. However, that was a very lethargic AJ performance where Moses doesn't really fight like that, as you know. And I think that Moses Itauma gets Franklin out of here in the first half of the fight. I think Franklin could go into the 3rd or 4th round, but Franklin did not look great against Ivan Ditchko, which was a fight that he won, and actually a fight that I thought was pretty close because that Ditchko let go of himself in the back half of the fight, and that was a very slop fest heavyweight fight. I expect Moses Itauma to absolutely light Franklin up. He says he wants the winner of the Richard Torres Frank Sanchez fight after because he wants that IBF eliminator, that position, which I'm like, dude, you were offered that eliminator. The reason why Torres got it is because you turned the Sanchez fight down. I don't understand, wanting to fight the winner of that when you could have been in that position already. You could have been fighting them tonight. It's just, I don't know. It's just kind of weird logic. But anyways, yeah, I think Itauma beats him in the first few rounds. I'm really excited to see him back. I'm so excited. The rest of the card is stacked. Co-main event, Willie Hutchinson, Ezra Taylor. What a phenomenal light heavyweight fight. Ezra Taylor's undefeated. Willie Hutchinson does have 2 losses, but this is him on his climb back to world level. I mean, the guy beat Craig Richards, who was competitive at times with Joshua Buatsi. This is by far Ezra Taylor's toughest test, and I think it's a really, really good fight. I'm going to lean in the favor of Ezra Taylor because I've been so impressed with him thus far. And Willie Hutchinson has been great, and Willie Hutchinson, you cannot count him out. I mean, we saw that with Craig Richards. He was an underdog in that fight, and he dominated him. But I am picking Ezra Taylor, although I can very much see a Willie win. I think it's a great fight. A lot of animosity there, too. Before that is going to be Liam Davies fighting Francesco Grandelli for the European Featherweight Championship. It was meant to be Davies fighting Zach Miller, which would have been a British championship. And, I mean, that's disappointing that fight's not happening because that was a good matchup, but as far as replacements go, this is very, very solid. Liam Davies, I would like him to be a little bit more active now in the featherweight division, and Grandelli is a really, really good opponent. So I'm looking forward to that. You got Shaquille Thompson fighting Brad Pauls. Shaquille Thompson, if he wins this, he probably walks into an IBF vacant title fight as they just stripped Janabek. He's number 3 with them for some reason. Brad Pauls is his toughest opponent as a pro. And, I mean, I think that's a really good matchup. I am leaning the way of Shaquille Thompson, but like I said, he's never really been tested like this, and I feel like Brad Pauls has had those fights with Denzel Bentley and Nathan Heaney where he's had to, be the best version of himself and show up and put on a war. And we're just going to have to see is Shaquille Thompson, he has to be ranked that highly for a reason. It's a good fight there. Speaking of Nathan Heaney, he returns after a very weird period of his career. He's going to be fighting Jerome Warburton. He's coming off the British title fight loss to Kieran Conway. So that's a decent fight. Michael Gomez Jr. and Jordan Flynn, 2 guys that I guess recently were dropped by Matchroom. They're fighting here and on a Queensberry card. I think that's a very fine matchup, probably leaning towards Gomez. I think Jordan Flynn's good, but he's just not. He's just not. He hasn't been in as many big fights as Gomez has. And you also have Alex Murphy versus Josh Holmes on the card. Holmes is undefeated, and I believe he has Johnny Depp is going to be ringside watching him for some reason. I don't know. And then Alex Murphy does have 2 losses, but both those losses were really, really good. It was against Aqib Fiaz and Khalil Majid. So I thought that he looked great in both of those. But that's your Magnificent 7. Nelson Birchall challenging for the English on the prelims against a decent opponent. Billy Denise, John Joe Kerrigan, Adam Hamed. I cannot wait for Saturday in the afternoon. Like I said, we have the PFL's return to the United States, their first card here in 7 months. And it's the first time under this new, format they're doing where we're having, just straight up title fights similar to the UFC. This card does not have a title fight. In fact, the main event isn't even 5 rounds on Tapology. It's saying it's only 3, which I think is a big misfire. I think it should always have 5-round main events. Anyways, it's Johnny Eblen bouncing back from his first professional loss, fighting Bryan Battle, who's, of course, coming out of the UFC. After missing weight multiple times, fighting at middleweight, you always have to be worried, okay, are you going to make weight? I think that he should, but because he made it for DBX, I know. But yeah, I mean, this is a really, really good fight for the PFL to make. I like it. They're using the name value of Bryan Battle from the UFC. Johnny Eblen is maybe their best fighter, or at least up there. He's really, really good. He is a top tier middleweight, and I think that going into the Costello Van Steenis rematch, he's got a really good shot. I mean, he got submitted with like 10 seconds to go after dominating like 4 rounds of that fight. So, I mean, look, the winner of this is almost guaranteed a title shot. And I think Eblen does beat Bryan Battle. I think he just takes him down. And, I mean, his nickname is Pressure. I think that he just out wrestles him for the 15 minutes. Co-main event is Dalton Ross to Impa Kasangane. This one, they're also saying the winner could get a title shot. They're trying to set it up as like, oh, it's like a tournament, but whoever wins, whoever is the best look can get the title shot. I do think that it will. If Eblen wins, he's getting the title shot. Costello said he wants Eblen. But I think this is a really good co-main event. Probably leaning in the way of Dalton Ross just because he's been overall in better form. He did get beat by Fabian Edwards last time out, but that was after Fabian already beat Impa. So they're both, I think they were actually both finished by Fabian Edwards. But, I mean, this is a good matchup. I am leaning towards Dalton Ross, but I love Impa Kasangane, and I can very much see a path to victory for him. We're just going to have to see, if the best version of both of them show up. Ariana Lipski, I think this is her PFL debut. Yeah. And she's fighting Sumiko Inaba. That's the feature fight. Alexi Pergani versus Julia Art. Yeah. I mean, the rest of the card is really not great. It's mainly those top 2 fights, some other stuff on the main card. But other than that, you're really watching for the middleweight main and co-main event. But I'm excited. PFL had a great show last week. Hope they do have another one here. ProBox TV, they've got another event. They're going every weekend. This one, main evented by Brian Acosta, Ronnie Rios. Awesome featherweight fight. Brian Acosta, of course, he had the very, very good fight with Ramon Cardenas, who's competitive in. I lost that. Then he loses to Suleiman Sagawa. Ronnie Rios, I believe this may be his first fight since the loss to Nick Ball. It is. And so that was like a year and a half ago. And both these guys can win this fight. I mean, Ronnie Rios, a former world champion, I believe. But I'm going to lean in the favor of Acosta, mainly just because of that activity, and we saw how competitive he was with guys like Cardenas. So I think that he does win this fight, but we'll see. Co-main event, Rene Tejas-Giron, riding off of that Jordan White victory, which was awesome. He's fighting Malik Montgomery, who used to be undefeated and then is on a 2-fight losing streak. I think it's going to extend to 3, if I'm being honest. I like Malik Montgomery. I think he's fun to watch, but he's just now falling into this opponent, this B-side category, and Rene Tejas-Giron knows that side very well, but I just think that, I mean, looking how good he looked against Jordan White, I don't think Malik Montgomery is better than Jordan White. Probably not. So I think Tejas wins this one, but it's pro box. It's always 50-50. Let's see how it goes. But yeah, I'm picking Acosta and Tejas to win their fights. Leonardo Rubalcava is also on this card. He's been in kind of a weird space, but fun to watch. Very fun to watch. Okay. And then lastly, you also have BKFC Mohegan Sun 3, they're calling it. So I guess that they're going to do a lot of fights in the Mohegan Sun. They're going to number it like it's its own, like UFC Apex. But yeah, main event, heavyweight, Parker Porter, Hayes Wilson, winner of this. Gets pretty close to a title shot, I think. I think Parker Porter's in like the top 5, so especially if he wins. Co-main event, Pat Casey versus Zeb Vincent. I mean, I love BKFC, man. I really do. I think there's 11 fights in total on this card, which is the customary number. But yeah, a very busy Saturday night, so I will not be watching that card live or the PFL card or the Pro Box card, but I will be watching the UFC and PBC cards. But yeah, really good weekend. Let's hop into some news because we still have so much more to talk about. And what's probably the biggest piece of news this week, Golden Boy and DAZN have finally agreed on a multi-year deal extension. I think it was Dan Rafael that reported that it's supposed to be 2 years, so not the biggest deal extension in the world, but, Oscar's saying they're going to come in hot and heavy. They're going to have a lot more events, a lot of dates. I hope they have a lot of dates because the last year or two they've not had that many. We don't know when the first card is going to be yet, similar to Top Rank, but I mean, just think about it. DAZN has now got Golden Boy, Top Rank, Matchroom, Queensberry, MF Pro, Salida Promotions. They've even got deals with people like Eye of the Tiger. Of course, all the Ring Magazine cards pop up on there. They're getting the Benavides Zerto card. They did a deal with PBC for that. Maybe some MVP shows here and there, Misfits. I mean, they've just got everything. They've got everything, and I saw somebody say, like, it's about to become DAZN versus TKO/Zuffa/Turkey. And I'm like, yeah, but Turkey's still working with DAZN. So that really is what it feels like. It feels like all of the promoters are teaming up under DAZN to kind of combat against TKO, which we're going to talk about some other things relating to them in a minute. But yeah, I mean, this is great for boxing, great for Golden Boy, and great for DAZN. Rick Meridian, who is of course the infamous manager of Virgil Ortiz, as soon as this news comes out, starts to try and get back into Oscar's good graces, texting him, apologizing, asking to call, saying he wants to talk, and Oscar publicly posting those texts and just saying, "Man, fuck you," as he says in his clapback, saying, "I don't want anything to do with him. He's the worst manager in the sport, and I'm never working with him again." So it's definitely very dirty. I think they're both doing a disservice to their fighter in Virgil Ortiz, but I don't know. Hopefully we can just squash the beef and get a deal done for Virgil to fight Boots or somebody like Fundora, or Thurman if he beats him somehow. Yeah, but I need to see Virgil back, and I would love to see him fight Boots. But good that Golden Boy is back on DAZN for the next 2 years at least. And this also should not excuse DAZN from ever having like a weak lineup. I mean, with all these promoters, they should be having at least, like I was going to say, they should have at least 3 U.S. shows a month and at least 3 UK shows a month that are like decent, Because Matchroom is going to do at least 1 UK and hopefully at least 1 US show a month. Queensberry is going to do at least 1 UK show, probably 2 a month. Matchroom maybe even do 2 as well. Top Rank should be doing 1 to 2 a month. Golden Boy should be doing around 1 a month. MF Pro should be doing 1 like every other month. Like we should have a lot of events coming through and, get value for our money and all the other stuff thrown in there. Conor McGregor, he teased his comeback in an Instagram post. It really seems like we're getting close. Ariel Helwani last week saying that something disastrous would have to happen for Conor to not come back and fight on this July 11th International Fight Week card. Jorge Masvidal said that he was being brought back by the UFC after denying to fight, after rejecting the Netflix offer. But apparently they've said that is not for Conor McGregor. He's not in the options there, which I thought kind of made sense. They're also saying that Max Holloway is the front runner. So we thought that it was going to be Charles. Everybody was talking about Max Charles fight week, like winner. This is going to be, in line to fight Conor. Charles wins, but it's not a BMF performance. So I think they just want to put Max in there anyways, because that's going to be a guaranteed banger. So I'm cool with it. If it is Conor versus Max, I have really no issues. Conor's coming off a couple losses and 5 years of inactivity, and he's still going to go in and fight someone like Max Holloway, who is coming off a loss, sure, but is like top 5 or 6 in the lightweight division. Yeah, great fight, and I hope it gets announced soon. Islam Makashev's manager said that he would be back in July, so there's a little bit of talk away. Are they going to share a card? Dana later comes back and says, nope, he's going to be fighting in August. So there you go. They're not fighting on the same card or against each other, and there's not going to be 2 PLEs in July. Islam's fighting in August, and apparently Ali Abdelaziz also said that Islam was asleep when they got the call to fight Ilya, and by the time that Islam woke up and was ready to talk about it, they had already moved on to Justin Gaethje. I mean, I don't know, man. Like, these stories are just kind of crazy. I don't think Islam's a duck at all. And I mean, look, like I said, I think that Islam ducked because of injury and Ilya ducked because of money. I think that one of those is much more telling of what's actually ducking. But yeah, just really weird. But I'm excited to see Islam come back because he takes too long in between fights. Very important boxing news. The House of Representatives has passed the Ali Act. Now, it does not mean that it's going into effect immediately. It still has to go through Senate, I believe. Oscar De La Hoya said that he was invited by a senator to come up and speak against it, and I think he said he's going to go to Washington and do as much, which I'm really glad that he is. I'm glad that more boxing people should be opposing this. But you know what? I mean, we know it's going to pass. We know that it's not overall like a huge deal for the country, this Ali Act, and it's going to and like, let's not be stupid. Dana White and TKO have a very, very good political relationship with the government and the administration, and that's going to help them in this scenario, and I fully expect it to get passed. My only thing is that this may not only affect Zuffa Boxing. This could benefit other promotions. A lot of people mention how MVP is starting to talk about their women's roster as their women's league, saying, oh yeah, joining the MVP women's league, fighting in the women's league. And using the term league makes me think they're going to try and make this a UBO as well, have their own titles, and it wouldn't surprise me, especially with Nikisa Badarian talking about the sanctioning bodies and saying how, oh, they're not choosing the most marketable fights. Speaking of it like a business, not a sport. Which it is a business, but still. So I think that it's very possible that you see MVPW introduce a belt. Last night, Keith Thurman was holding a PBC belt, which was more of a trophy thing from the first PBC fight 11 years ago, but who knows? I mean, PBC, when they came in, it seemed like they were trying to be a UBO, and they're the ones who have been holding out and not always worked with other promoters, and I could very much see them trying to do the same thing and have a PBC championship. So potentially we're not just getting a Zuffa belt introduced, we're getting a lot of belts introduced. Things could get messy under this. I just hope these fighters don't get screwed over. Speaking of fighters, Jai Opetaia is apparently set to pursue legal action against the IBF for stripping him. If I'm being honest, I really do feel bad for Jai Opetaia, but I don't see any way he's going to win this. The IBF made it very, very clear what would happen if Jai Opetaia broke the rules and fought for a non-trophy belt that was not a sanctioning body belt. And they said, look, man, you can fight for the Zuffa belt or you can fight for ours. And he said, okay, I'm fighting for the Zuffa belt. It's like, all right, you're not fighting for ours then? We're stripping you. They told him. They were very clear. I understood that. So I don't think he's going to win this case. I don't think it'll even go through. But it's just stupid. It's just not worth it. I mean, like you sleep the bed you lie in. Sleep in the bed that you make. I don't know if I said that right. GSP, he has a movie in the works, biopic, which I think is pretty cool. I don't know when it's coming out, but that's kind of a cool thing. It's always very nice when you get to see a combat sports athlete have a movie made about them. Clarissa Shields had the movie made about her. Of course, you had the Smashing Machine, but that was a little bit different. That wasn't as much a biopic as it was just like a crazy, segment in that life of Mark Kerr. But yeah. I'm excited for that. Okay, let's talk some more news. Paul Hughes, unfortunately, he is out of his PFL Belfast fight with J.J. Wilson. He's got an injury. This sucks because that was like the biggest selling point. Now Derek Kelly is stepping in. I believe he's undefeated. I believe he's making his PFL, or no, Reese McKee is making his PFL debut in the co-main. Derek Kelly's been with PFL and Bellator for a while, I think. Anyways, yeah. I think that this is it's a good replacement. Derek Kelly was already meant to fight on the card. It's a good fight with J.J. Wilson. I have no issues with that fight. And I'm glad that the undercard fighters and everybody else still gets to fight. They still get to put an event on next Thursday, I guess. Or even like next Thursday. I don't know. It's still a few weeks out. I thought it was closer than it was. But yeah, I'm glad that everybody still gets to fight. It just sucks because Paul Hughes was the main selling point of that card. And without him, the excitement kind of falls off a cliff. They're going to do this in Belfast, but I think the main card is set to start at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which means the main card starts there at like midnight. So I don't know if that changes now they don't have a superstar headlining, but we shall see. Speaking of, fights being announced, Dalton Smith versus Alberto Puey has been announced for June 6th in Sheffield. We knew this was coming. It was ordered, but dude, props to Dalton Smith for taking this. Very, very tough first title defense. I don't even know if he's a favorite in this. Alberto Puey was really, really good. He was very competitive with Shibel Matias. He may have even won that fight. Granted, Smith knocked out Matias. You have to think he's a favorite, but I could very much see this going the way of Alberto Puello. You also have Angelo Leo versus Raif Salim being official for May 9th in Atlanta, Georgia. Let's go. I live in Atlanta. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to attend this one because I think I have a prior commitment, but and that definitely blows because we don't get many fights here, but I think that is awesome to bring in here. I don't know if either of the guys have ties to Atlanta. I didn't think that they did, but this is cool. I mean, it's on a Salida Promotions show. So it's going to be on DAZN, which is great, but why is it on a Salida show and not Manny Pacquiao Promotions when they're the ones that won the purse bid? Maybe they want to put on a bigger event, but they're not a big enough company to do it, so they went to Salida. Maybe Salida signed a deal with Aleem or Leo. I have no idea. It doesn't make any sense to me, but it's happening May 9th in ATL. Manel Kape versus Kyoji Horiguchi is apparently set for June 20th at UFC Vegas 119. A lot of outrage about this one because why is this fight in the Apex? It's a title eliminator. Absolutely it is, and this is a fight that could have been a great return fight for the UFC to go back to Japan. They had their first fight there a while ago, and they had in front of like 18,000 people. Now they're going to fight in front of like 1,000. So it's definitely a huge, huge fall off, and I hate seeing great fights like this go to the Apex. They should at least be on a pay-per-view, I think, or headlining a city fight night, especially an international one, but it is what it is. We move on. Very, very good news. The Fabio Wardley Daniel Dubois undercard has finally been revealed, and I love it. I think it's 50-50 fights all the way through. It's just like the main event. Jared Anderson, ex-Queensberry, that's official. He's going to be fighting Solomon Dakers as the co-main event to this card. Sol Dakers had a really good performance last time, and maybe he pulls off another upset here. But, yeah, I don't really understand Anderson signing with Queensberry besides, him just being one of the heavyweights that they have in their huge heavyweight roster. Top Rank is still involved with it, which is important, and now they're both on DAZN, easier to promote.
But yeah, Anderson Daker's co-main event. Jack Rafferty versus Echo Esserman. Banger of a fight. Now, I thought that this meant that Rafferty's moving up to 147. On BoxRec, it's listed as a super lightweight fight. Maybe that changes, but dude, just all-out war that one is. And then Liam Cameron fighting Brad Rhea, another 50-50 fight. Both of them coming off their light heavyweight card from November. And then Khalil Majid is going to be challenging himself by fighting Gavin Gwynn, who, as we know, gave a very, very tough 2 fights to Cameron Vaughn. And we'll see if Majid is ready to take on the dangerous Gavin Gwynn. Awesome 5-fight card. I was waiting for that. Yeah. No, they're like superstar, like world title fights on the undercard. A lot of people are expecting Hamza Shiraz to fight in the co-main event for a world title. But I love this. 5 fights, and they're really all 50-50. Like Anderson Dakers, of course, Anderson's a favorite, but if the best version of him doesn't show up, and we see the version we've seen in the last 2 or 3 fights, Dakers could beat him. Rafferty versus Esserman is a 50-50. Cameron versus Rhea, maybe if Cameron is a slight favorite, but that's kind of a 50-50. And then Majid versus Gwynn. Majid should win, but Gwynn is really, really good. He's great. He loves upsetting stuff. So, I don't know, man. Great fight card. Matchroom have agreed an extension to their deal with Riyadh Season. And they will be involved with the May 23rd Usyk fight, so they're going to be the promoters behind that. I was curious who would be promoting it, and we know Bivol is likely to be on that card, so it makes sense they'd be doing it. And again, this is just more fun to Turkey fueling both sides of the fire. Eddie and Dana are beefing big time, and Turkey's literally funding both of them. I just think that's hilarious, and he's not catching strays from either. Very, very funny and very Turkey of him to do so. Rafael Espinoza is apparently looking for a unification, namely Brandon Figueroa. I love that. They're the 2 tall guys in the division. You do have Angelo Leo fighting Ray Salim. You do have Bruce Carrington there. But if anybody's going to unify, I definitely want to see it be Espinoza, and I like the idea of him fighting Figueroa just because they are the big guys. And, then say Espinoza beats him, Top Rank has a hold of all 3 titles because Angelo Leo is still with Top Rank as well. So, a lot of fights for them to easily make, although I doubt that they will. Happy to see Espinoza going for unifications. Robert Garcia saying that Hitchens versus Delgado, the IBF title fight, will be on Zuffa Boxing. I highly doubt that. Maybe it gets agreed to be on Zuffa and Delgado leaves Top Rank, which doesn't make sense. And then Hitchens gets stripped of the IBF title, which we literally just saw with Jai. It makes no sense. I think he's just talking out of his ass. I think Hitchens may be going to Zuffa, and maybe he's signing with Zuffa and then fighting not for the Zuffa title, but fighting on similar to Conor Benn, just going to fight on a Ring Magazine card. That I see that much more likely, but who knows, bro? Who knows? Speaking of the IBF, Andy Cruz versus Albert Bell has reportedly been agreed. That's the IBF lightweight title eliminator, so we're know that's going to be mandatory for Raymond Murataya, even though Cruz just fought him. It was a really close fight, so I'm not mad at him being in this eliminator, and I very much expect Cruz to beat Bell. He could have moved down to 130, staying at 135, and I think he beats Bell and is back in the fight with Murataya, it looks like. So some more news about UFC being cheapskates. Apparently, they are now only paying accommodations for travel and hotel and stuff like that to the head coach, not the other teammates. They have to find how to pay on their own, which is just like, dude, you're like I don't even know how many billion-dollar organization. You can't pay for this kind of stuff, but Dana White can give Steiny from the Nelk Boys a $5 million watch. Like, get out of here. It's ridiculous. Moving on from that, Tommy Fury versus Eddie Hall is reported to main event a Misfits pay-per-view June 13th in Manchester. This is very Misfits, and he's very funny. I feel like these two have talked about fighting each other for a while, and it was like, yeah, sure, we'll see it. And now it seems like they actually may be fighting each other. Tommy Fury, he says he wants to be a world champion. He's refusing to rematch Jake Paul, and that's the only money fight out there for him. Besides this, I guess, but Jake Paul's way more money. And now he's going to be fighting Eddie Hall, who is the world's strongest man, but is not a boxer. He's going to outweigh Tommy Fury by about 150 pounds. I don't even know what to say, dude. It's just so weird. This is just really, really weird. If it gets announced, I'll be very surprised, honestly, but I would love to see it. Why not? It'd be a hilarious thing to watch on TV. Chris Smith, this is a sad one, says he lost motivation for boxing after the Zerto fight and says that showed in his performance against Brandon Glanton. He definitely did not look great against Glanton. And, he hasn't fought since Glanton. That was almost a year ago. Hasn't talked about fighting, refused the WBO interim title fight, left boxer. Look, if Vidal Riley, or actually it doesn't even matter, the winner of Riley versus Mateusz Masternock is going to fight for the vacant IBF Cruiserweight Championship. And CBS is the guy who's right there in the rankings. He's probably going to be fighting the winner of that for the vacant title if he chooses to continue boxing. I've always said, if you do not feel like you're fully in boxing, your head and your heart, then you shouldn't be fighting. Hopefully he can get that motivation back and falls back in love with the sport. But otherwise, dude, if you're saying you don't want to be fighting, then you shouldn't be making yourself, because it's a dangerous game and it's not worth it. But look, I mean, to each his own. We'll see if he decides to come back. I'm not taking this as a retirement. I'm not even taking this as like a considering retirement. He's just saying that he's not, that loss kind of really affected him, and that he's not, the same not in love with the sport the same way he used to be. Matchroom announced their stacked May 2nd card. Kona Walker fighting Sam Eggington, which is just an absolute war, bro. Like, there's no way that fight goes the distance. It's going to be incredible. Co-main event, Bilal Fawaz making the first defense of his British and Commonwealth Super Welterweight titles. He's going to be fighting Ryan Kelly, who I definitely think Fawaz is a favorite in that fight, but Ryan Kelly is always game. You know that one's also going to be a banger. Before that, Kieran Conway versus Mark Jeffers. Like, dude, these fights are awesome. They're just all straight up wars. And then before that, TMA Ayton steps up in what I believe is probably her first 10-rounder. She's going to be fighting Stevie Levy, who's, a British fighter whose her record is 15-4. She's fought on a lot of like GBM and like top tier shows. And I mean, she's been a decent opponent and had some decent wins herself. Really good step up for Ayton. Janae Boston will be on this card making his comeback, and Louis Ward as well will be on it, making his second pro fight. It's a really, really fun card. I mean, not a lot of like superstars on it, but all four of those main card fights are wars. I cannot wait for May 2nd. It's going to be a great day of boxing. This just adds to it. You already got Inoue Nakatani and Benavidez Zurdo on the same day. Like, it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. Okay. Also, going down soon, June 4th, it was announced today, Lerone Richards versus Albert Ramirez has been rebooked for that date in Montreal. John Arobio, Imam Kataev, and Dimitri Asanau all on the card, so a lot of the bright future stars of Eye of the Tiger will be fighting, and I'm excited, dude. I'm excited. I really, really like Albert Ramirez. I think he's a great fighter. I think Lerone Richards is a bit of an easy fight for him, but they're not moving away from it, and yeah, excited to see this one in June. Ryan Garner versus Michael Magnesi is apparently set for June 20th in the UK for the WBC Interim Super Featherweight Championship. Ryan Garner very highly ranked with him. Michael Magnesi, a decent opponent. I'm not mad at it. I'm just also a little bit confused because I thought that we were moving towards Ryan Garner challenging Anthony Kakachi for his IBF title. Or sorry, no, not IBF, WBA. He used to be the IBF champion. The WBA. He just won the WBA. Why is he not fighting Ryan Garner for? That's like an in-house Queensberry fight. They both fought on the same card. It seemed like they're very much setting that up, but I guess they want to make Garner champion quicker. Maybe, Kakachi can't return as quickly as Garner can, and Garner wins this, he'll be mandatory for a Shockey Foster, which they may think is a better fight, bigger fight, and maybe he gets to be then he and Kakachi can unify together. I don't know, but we'll see. Karen Chikadzian's team has won the purse bid for the Paddy Donovan IBF Eliminator. So it's Matchroom is 2-0 or 0-2 against Karen Chikadzian for the IBF Eliminators. Obviously, they lost in the Boots rematch Eliminator, but then they still ended up putting that fight on. Yeah, I mean, they also lost the purse bid against No Limit for the Paddy Donovan one, or at least, they didn't. I don't know, bro. I don't know. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that fight. It's a good one. BKFC announced that the bantamweight title has been vacated by Justin Ibarola. I don't know if he's leaving the promotion because I know that he did just make his debut on Misfits or what. But Jamel Herring, former boxing world champion, is going to be fighting Nate Maness for it May 22nd at BKFC 89 in Palm Desert. We knew that Jamel Herring hinted that he was going to be fighting for the title, and I'm totally cool with this. This is main eventing that card and should be a fun one. PFL today announced that Marceli Alves, who won the tournament last year, is going to be fighting Ryzen champ Naoki Inoue on the May 23rd PFL Brussels card. That's a great, great fight. I feel like the winner of that, I mean, I don't know if Inoue is going to stay in PFL or not, but I love that they're doing a co-promotion. I think it's super cool. MMA organizations feel like they never do that, and I love the PFL and Ryzen, which are probably 2 and 3 to the UFC, are going to be teaming up, or I guess one's in there too. I don't know, but yeah. I like it, and if Alves wins, I feel like he should really be fighting for the vacant title against Sergio Pettis if he wins his fight. I feel like that makes a lot of sense. I feel like that should have been the fight made in the first place instead of them both going these other routes, but it is what it is.
Francisco Rodriguez versus Angelino Cordova is apparently happening in an WBC flyweight eliminator on May 23rd. Good fight. I mean, both these guys I don't love because Rodriguez got found as a drug cheat, and Cordova put on a stinker against Yankel Rivera last year, which is probably the worst fight of the year. So, yeah, I mean, a little bit weird how Rodriguez is already getting another title eliminator. He didn't even get suspended. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. But it is what it is. And, I mean, he probably beats Cordova is what I would think, but who knows. And then Kudratillo Abdukakarov is saying that he's not getting paid for the Joshua Anton fight last week. Obviously, he retired after the first round very absurdly, said with a head injury. Pro Box better pay him because that's illegal to not pay the guy, even if he didn't give you the fight that you wanted. I really hope that this is not true or there's just some delay with the payment or something because that's messed up. And the last piece of news, IBA Pro announced their 16th event, Artem Suslenko versus Artur Man. A heavyweight fight April 17th in Russia, so IBA keep on kicking with more cards in Russia. I feel like they were putting on bigger fights last year. Like they had Kubrat Pulev fighting. They did the Thrilla in Manila show. They had the Albert Bautagazi Jezza Dickens fight. And we're not really seeing that so far in 2026. But also maybe it just takes them all because all those were towards the end of the year. So who knows? That's all I've got for y'all today. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you had a great week. I hope you enjoy the weekend. Lots of good fights coming up. I cannot wait. Follow me on Twitter. I'll be doing all my live updates there. But thank you guys for listening so much, and peace out.